Why Ronnie Oneal conviction was wrong. For a little background, Ronnie Oneal III was accused of killing his girlfriend, his 9-year-old daughter, and stabbing his son. Now, let me let you know off top that I am not talking about whether Mr. Oneal did it or not. And I am not about to sit here and dissect the evidence in his case. I am here talking about what is humanly wrong with his conviction and how it is another case and example of unequal treatment that continues to lead to the mass incarceration of Black people in this country. Most of you all learned about Mr. Oneal like I did when he started trending in the news, being recorded for yelling at the jury during his trial where he was representing himself. Everyone thought it was so funny. Videos everywhere. Hee hee ha ha. What a fool. Why is he yelling at the jury? Is he trying to get convicted? This is just some of the names of the videos and the stuff that I saw about him. But what many people did not know or realize, and still don't know or realize, is that Mr. Oneal has a severe mental health issues, plural. So much so that he was found incompetent, meaning not in his right mind enough to legally be tried for these charges in 2018. Understand this, my people. To be found incompetent to stand trial, you have to be what some people call bat crazy. You fill in the blanks. Y'all know what I'm talking about. A lot of these people hallucinate and hear voices so often that either they feel like it's threatening their life or telling them something to do that is wrong, which is what happened in this case with Mr. Oneal. For Mr. Oneal, according to the 911 call, he stated that there were white demons living inside of his girlfriend trying to kill him. But outside of hallucinations, some people who suffer with mental health issues can barely brush their teeth and put on their clothes without assistance. Some injure themselves or others when they are in and out of these different personalities that a lot of them have, including Mr. Oneal. A lot of these people are borderline unable to operate daily in society by what we define as normal because of the stuff that goes on in their head. Let me tell you this. It is not easy to be found incompetent, particularly as a Black person, because the criminal justice system sees incompetent as a get out of jail free card. So people have to be pretty much eating off the floor or speaking that they see people who are not there and hallucinating a good bit, hearing voices telling them what to do, a threat to themselves or others, before a lot of physicians would even find or deem them incompetent. Why? Money, 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 race, race, race. Aren't those the top two answers to why America does what it does 99% of the time? Money, let's go through money. America will spend billions upon billions of dollars to build prisons, to house people, not house, cage people for free labor that runs their industrial, government, and privatized system and businesses. Watch 13th documentary on Netflix if you want more information about that. But then every year, consistently, they continue to cut and reduce the amount of mental facilities that house people who can't operate without assistance and medication because of mental issues, who may be a harm to themselves or others. Why? Why would they do that? Because they can't get free labor out of those people. Those people just have to be taken care of. So what takes the place of the mental facilities? More jails and prisons of free labor. Let's talk about race. So while I have seen white people who are deemed incompetent into these facilities and treated as they should be, as people who are unable to operate in society and have a solidified bed where they're given their medicine and treatment, many people like Mr. Oneal are fed as much medicine as possible and trained to answer the same questions every day for months and sometimes years on the trial process until eventually they can repeat back what has been pounded in their head over and over and over about the trial process when they have that hearing, like they had for Mr. Oneal in court, to determine whether or not they are competent. Without a lot of these state physicians giving a crap about whether or not they're actually incompetent, because they're still hearing voices in their head and they're still hallucinating and seeing stuff, they're just going to say, well, they can answer the questions now, so now they're good and competent to go to trial and face these charges. I have had a Black client who couldn't even finish a sentence. I mean, literally could not finish a sentence and was found competent. And then had seen white people standing in court having full conversations. And then the physician said, oh, they hear voices, so there is issue as to their incompetency and whether they can be restored to full restoration of competency. Get the hell out of here. My guy couldn't even finish his sentence. I am not saying, do not get me wrong, I am not saying that people who suffer from mental illness should be allowed to kill people. What I am saying is Mr. Oneal clearly has been struggling with his severe mental illness for years and years, if not his whole life, before 2018 when he was found incompetent. And in the 911 calls that I talked about, with him talking about white demons, that is a classic sign of someone who suffers from schizophrenia or some other type of multiple personality disorder. And the court knew this because they have his mental health records. And instead of saying this man is not in his right mind to make this type of decision that is life or death, and he is not competent to move forward with trial, they said, yeah, he good to go. Who? The man who, when was asked his age in court, said he was 32 in this world, as if he was at the same time in another world, another age. That man is competent. And we're talking about Mr. Oneal, right? Oh, this is everything from Mr. Oneal. He's the same man who, when they asked him that he, wanted to make sure that he understood that he was possibly facing death, he said, yeah, he was ready to die like B.I.G. And when the judge said, well, B.I.G. was murdered, he said, oh yeah, like you all about to do me. This man. And there was other things that he said, and you could just see by his actions that something was mentally wrong there. And the judge heard and seen all of this and other statements from Mr. Oneal that showed that he's severely not in his right mind, even though he can pick up a sheet of paper and read some questions off of it. It takes more than that to be mentally competent. But then they said, oh yeah, he's good to go. Let him go represent himself. The jury did not have to convict Mr. Oneal. Mr. Oneal was set up to convict himself, and not a conviction for guilty by reason of insanity that may have actually been fitting for a jury to consider in his case if he would have been equipped or helped to present that to a jury, but guilty. Like a human, just straight up guilty, like a human being with no mental issues who will rot in prison or be executed as a cold-hearted murderer, killer, which is how he is described on pretty much all media and news channels you see. But what was the white man? Just for an example, Lee Oswald, the man who killed Kennedy, the president, who also had multiple personality disorders, categorized or described as, was it a cold-blooded killer or murder in the media? Let me answer that for you. No, it was not. If you look him up, he's been described and labeled as a man with a mental health issue, multiple mental health issues, who was a disturbed youngster with an absence of family life. Or what about Jennifer and Sarah Hart, who killed all 6 of their children when they drove them off a cliff? 6 children, 4 or 5 of those kids were Black, put them all in that SUV and drove them off of a cliff. Looked into their searches on their phone. One of the searches was, how long would it take for them to drown? Made sure they searched the no-kill shelter for their dog, which is a whole nother conversation, but killed those kids. What trended in the news and media about these 2 white women? How were they described and labeled? I'll tell you, they said that it was a systematic failure of the child service system because the adoption agency and the child services missed the warning signs of abuse. So we blame the child services in their case. Where is the systematic failure for the Black man without the mental health treatment that he desperately needed and should have received then and now? There is none. We send white men, not all, but most, with these same issues to a mental facility. Meanwhile, Mr. Oneal, if he is not executed first, about to rot in prison for the rest of his life, however long that is. Because let's be honest, prisons aren't set up to treat, restore, or keep mental people alive at all. This is another sad example of America's criminal justice system not seeing humanity if it isn't covered in a white cloth. They see Black people as a threat to kill, trash to get rid of, and free labor to cage. Stay woke.